All right, guys, let's do this. My name is Richard.lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard. Welcome to a better lifestyle. Today I have a special guest. I hope I usually ask the name sometimes if it's well pronounced, and I forgot to ask you. Is it Key Mckay?
Yes, you got it right.
Great. So I have Key Mckay with me here. So she is an entrepreneur, and she's going to talk to us about her journey and give some insights. So she's doing great in the entrepreneurship world. So I think you guys are going to like this episode. So please, Key, tell a little bit about your story, and we'll get started.
Oh, that's such a broad question. Like, tell about your story. Okay. So for me, my journey in entrepreneurship started out early. I always say my parents were entrepreneurs and they were kind of the seed for me. And so that growing up, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but that path wasn't straight. It started out with little things like being a candy lady in high school, and then that just evolved into me going down the rabbit hole of marketing. And then that led to several ventures into now what I call entrepreneurship slash business owner.
Uh, do you think entrepreneurs are born or they're made?
I think it's both. So I think some people are born as an entrepreneur. Like for me, I feel like I'm one of those people. And the reason I feel like that is because for me, my parents were the seed that kind of showed me what it meant to be an entrepreneur. But because I had that seed is the equivalent to somebody who grows up with lawyers as parents. It's kind of like you're born into that world. But then there's some people who they're not exposed to that, but then they learn it because they're intentional about it. And so I think it's both.
Mhm. So, what was your learning process throughout the journey? What did you learn?
So with my parents being entrepreneurs, it allowed me to see entrepreneurship at a mom and pop scale. So it's like typical two people running a business trying to make it work. But then when we moved to America, then I saw like, no, there is different levels of entrepreneurship. Like there's mom and pop level, but there's enterprise level, there's corporate level, and you can be on any scale that you want to be on. It just depends on whether or not you're willing to invest in learning what you need to learn to become the person to run a business on any of those levels that you want to run it on, but then also understanding the back end of a business because many times as entrepreneurs, like for example, if you're good at making shoes, then you're a good craftsman, but that doesn't necessarily mean you understand the business side of business. And there's a side to, and there's the business of doing business. And if you can master the business of doing business, you can basically master any business because you understand the fundamentals. It's like a mechanic. Like if you know how to work a car, you can pretty much interchange the parts. But if you don't understand the fundamentals, then everything else you do doesn't work.
Hmm. And what are the types of business that you're in at the moment?
So I'm in the e-commerce space. I love the e-commerce because it allows me to do a lot. Even if you have like a small budget. So I love e-commerce. I do a lot there. I'm also in the consulting world. I primarily focus on business operation consulting, and I'm also in the marketing world. I'm not as heavy in the marketing world as I was when I initially started because my background started out with web design and graphic design. So I did a lot of evolving there, but then I realized that I really have a passion for helping people understand the inner workings of business. And so lately I've been focusing a lot on the business operation consulting. And like I said, I do a lot with e-commerce.
Okay, so you're a solopreneur.
No, so I have a team of five who are like direct employees of me, and then I have contractors who, depending on the project, the size of the project, I bring them on as needed.
Okay. And did you have did you have failures in the past before you reach where you are now?
Oh, absolutely. So when I got to college, because I had the background in sales and marketing, customer service, I found myself doing nightclub promoting. And so I wasn't necessarily into nightlife. Like I'm the type of person to go to a party and I'm like I have like one drink all night and I don't even finish it. So I wasn't like into nightlife, but I needed a way to help me pay for college. So I got into nightlife marketing because it was basically giving me steady cash to pay for tuition. Realizing that I didn't love what I was promoting, I decided to channel that elsewhere. So I took the money I was making from that and I invested it into a retail shoe store. I understood sales, I understood marketing, I understood how to source products, but I didn't understand business operation. So that business failed miserably. That was like the turning point that made me go down the rabbit hole of saying, hey, there's an element to business that I don't understand. And so I started studying business operation. I started studying strategies and processes and things like that. And that was kind of my bounce back.
What about the resources? Sometimes what's uh, what's blocking a lot of entrepreneurs, like in their journey, it's the resources around them, whether it's getting financing or human resources or anything related to that. Did you had any troubles when it comes to that?
Oh yeah. So I am one of 9 children. Hence I had to pay my own way through college because my parents didn't have it as much as they wanted to be supportive. They just didn't have it financially. In addition to that, my parents migrated to this country with all of their children. So it's like everything they knew when we lived in Guyana, they had to come here and start over. And that meant getting a 9 to 5. It meant not having as much time for family and all that stuff. So it's like I basically started out with nothing and I had to figure out a way like, okay, I got to find a way to build for myself. But more importantly, it's I have nieces and nephews. I have 12 nieces and nephews, and I don't want them to have to start from ground zero. And so, because I don't want them to start from ground zero, I'm not just at this point working for me, I'm working for me and for them. And so, I had to learn how to do bootstrapping. I had to learn how to I'm making money right now and I need to spend this money, but I have to tell myself no because I have to reinvest this back into the business so that it can grow because um, I made a lot of mistakes early on because I didn't understand how finances work. And so I found myself getting into debt a lot. And I had to even go back and say, hey, if you're going to build a real business, you can't be getting into debt. You can't be going down the rabbit hole of debt. So you got to learn how money works. And so I had to discipline myself to learn how to live, below my means. I had to learn what it means to invest. I had to learn what it means to, hey, 10%, you got to save, you got to invest, you got to learn. You don't got to become a guru at the stock market, but you got to at least understand what is a 401k, what is a Roth IRA. And so that led me down the rabbit hole of reading books like The Richest Man in Babylon, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I understand how money works because I didn't have any investors. I didn't have anybody who can give that to me.
Hmm. And how long you guys been in the US?
Um,
Because you
20 years now. I came here when I was 10. I'm 30, so 20 years.
okay. So did you had besides the failures, did you had any low points in your entrepreneurship journey or threats to your business, like to your success?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is a constant. I call it the hill and valley. Like you're constantly going up one hill to go down the other side of that hill to walk through a valley to get to the other side of another hill. And so it's a constant series of highs and lows. And there's been moments where it's like you're betting on a deal and you're like thinking like this is gonna work out and you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And I had to learn like, hey, no, you gotta learn how to diversify. And that's why I got into like, okay, there's consulting, but then you need to understand e-commerce, you need to understand IRAs and 401ks and how all these different things can work together for you. So I had to learn how to diversify. There was moments where I had to learn how to hire people. And so because I didn't have a blueprint for how do you build a team, I made a lot of mistakes with hiring people. And there was times where I hired people and their resume looked perfect. And it's like, oh, they got all the degrees and everything to go along with everything that they're saying. But then I put them in a practical environment and the theory doesn't apply. And I had to learn how to like hire people based on skill and character and not based on because you got a degree. And so now I employ what I call hands-on hiring, where whenever I go to hire somebody, in addition to doing the resume, like the interview, I want you to practically demonstrate for me that you know how to do what you're saying. So I'll put them on a week test, like, and I'll give them an assignment. Hey, and you got to show me, you got to demonstrate for me that you can do what you're telling me you can do before I can bring you on as a member on my team. And so I had to learn how to get creative because again, starting out, I don't have money to just, I can't afford to do constant employee turnover, and I didn't have the money to say, hey, I'm going to hire and train you to do something. So I at that time I needed to bring on people who had skill set that they're an expert, or at least they have understanding of what they're doing. And I'm okay with if we're learning together, but I can't be teaching you from ground zero if I don't even have the budget for that. So I had to learn how to get creative with different things like that.
And how do you build relationships like in the world of entrepreneurship? What's your strategy
So
in regards to networking?
so this started out for me because I started out in sales and marketing. Like early on in my career, I did a lot of like my early on jobs, they were door-to-door selling jobs, right? And so because I learned door-to-door sales, I was like 16 doing door-to-door sales. And so I learned how to get comfortable with talking to people, including strangers. So early on in my business, it was in-person networking. But then as I started to graft more towards the internet, it became a lot of online networking. The beautiful thing about online networking is I can be here, and for a lot of them, I'm networking with somebody in South Africa, I'm networking with somebody in the Caribbean and whatever. And so I learned how to get comfortable with reaching out and making those introductions and knowing who I'm connected to. So like, for example, if somebody friend me on LinkedIn, I might not say anything to them right then, but I'll go through their profile and I'll make a mental note of, okay, this is this person background. This is what they do. I have in my CRM, I'll like make notes of, okay, I connected with this person on LinkedIn. This is what they do. I might not necessarily need that person right now, but later down the road, I'm working on a project. I go back to my CRM and I say, okay, I filter to people. For example, if I'm looking for a salesperson, I filter my CRM, show me all the salespeople that I connected with. And I start to reach out to those people and I make intentional, like, hey, can we do a virtual coffee? And again, nothing might come of that conversation, but I made a point of contact with that person. They know my face. I know their face. I have an understanding of what they do. They have an understanding of what I do. Even though they might not work out for that project later down the road, they might come up for a different project. And so that's one strategy. The second strategy is, with in-person networking. In the beginning, I didn't fully understand how to maximize that. That came back full circle to me now because a lot of what I'm doing is back in the field, because I'm more meeting with my clients in person now, because on the consultant side of things, I'm doing a lot more in-person projects and things like that. So I started employing things like, I have this app on my phone that's called Cam Card, where, for example, if I go to a networking event and I meet someone, I pull out that app on my phone and I scan their business card. Immediately, that information is added to a CSV file that's imported into my CRM. And they go down, they get an email like, hey, great meeting you at this event, X, Y, and Z. Invitation is scheduled for a virtual coffee. If they hop on that call, great. I get an opportunity to get to know them. They get to know me. If they decide not to, that's fine too. But at least I make the follow up, right? And I continue with that conversation. And again, if I have 10 meetings in a day, one of those 10 meetings might turn out to be an interest. The other 9 meetings might be nothing, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't work out for something later. And that's what I had to learn. Like, just because something doesn't happen now doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity that can happen later. And so I learned how to savor those relationships for later.
And when it comes to scaling your business, like any business, what are some tips you have?
If I had to go back and redo or relearn or not make the mistakes I made, I would say I would spend more time learning myself. And the reason I would say learning myself is because many times entrepreneurs and business leaders will tell you, oh, hire for your weakness and work on your strengths. Well, if you don't even know what your weakness are, how are you going to effectively hire for them? Because the thing about being an entrepreneur is sometimes we have that arrogant mindset that I can do it all, especially when you're just starting out and you don't have the budget and you're like, I have to learn how to do all this stuff. And it's like, no, there's other ways around that. Like, for example, bartering for your services and things like that. And so I would learn myself, learn what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, but more importantly, learn how I think. Because though if you understand the way you think, then you understand even in communication, every person learn differently, every person communicate differently. So if the better you know yourself, the better you know who to surround yourself with. The second thing is I would study the business. Whatever business you're in, study that business. And you don't have to you're not studying the business to learn how to do everything yourself. You're studying the business to learn different strategies of doing the business. For example, if you're in the e-commerce world, you want to study both e-commerce strategies that has worked out, but you also want to study e-commerce strategies that didn't work, because even though it might have not worked for that business, sometimes the strategy didn't work because they're ahead of their time. Sometimes it was just the people that was deploying the strategy that was flawed. Sometimes it's they didn't have the budget that they needed to deploy that strategy. So you want to study why the strategy failed. And study in systems. Um, in the arena that in the arena that we're in right now with business, there is no turning back. Technology is it, and it's only building and growing. So the more friendly you become with technology, you don't have to understand every system, but you have to understand the systems that make your business work. So again, if you're in e-commerce world, if you're in I'm gonna keep using e-commerce just because it's a simpler example. If you're in e-commerce, there's a couple systems that you have to understand. You got to understand CRMs, but you got to understand e-commerce platforms. You got to understand inventory systems. So you got to understand the systems that work for your business, and you got to find the one that makes your business run. And the last thing I would say is, at as early as you can in your business, figure out what's your exit strategy. Are you building this business to sell it? Are you building it to franchise it? Are you building it to license the brand? What is your end game? Is this generational wealth? What are you doing? Because the earlier that you can understand that, the more effective you can be about at making long-term decisions. And that's really important.
Speaking of technology, are you using AI in your world?
Absolutely. I think at this point, I don't think AI is a if. Whether or not we want to integrate AI has been integrated already. When you think about Siri, what is Siri? That's an AI. When you think about Alexa, that's an AI. All of these things are AIs that has been working. It's just that now AI is becoming a thing where it's becoming standalone. And so now the world is going AI, but AI has been happening for a while. And so, yes, I do employ AI, even just the CRMs and stuff that you use. Now they're integrating AI with that stuff. So that's another way. I would say that it's new technology. And if you can discipline yourself to learn, at least understand what's going on with it, you don't have to become a fan of it. You don't have to love it. But at least if you get an understanding of it, you understand how it can or can't work for you. And so you can make a more informed decision.
And what is your overall goal as an entrepreneur?
My overall goal at this stage in the game, my overall goal is building legacy. And when I say legacy, I have a heart for giving. Like generosity is my second nature, and because I love to give, I I'm really keen on building other entrepreneurs at this point, and so I'm looking at avenues for collaborating with other entrepreneurs, but more importantly, building platforms that elevate other people's businesses. And so right now I'm in the process of building out what I'm calling Winker School of Business. It's what I'm looking to do is just a free entrepreneur school to just teach. I find that people who are creators are not necessarily good at business. And the challenge with that is a lot of times you're creative, but you don't have the money um, to hire consultants or bring on all these people. And so I'm looking at the generation behind me, teaching creators, whether it's craftspeople or content creators, the business side of business. And so I'm building out what I'm calling Winker School of Business to help me do that.
So you said something that I was uh, I was listening to a podcast, a YouTube video, and they were talking about that a little bit. Like people who are artistic sometimes, like they're just focusing on their craft, but not on the business side, and sometimes that could cripple you in the long run. What if the what if how do they deal with that? Like the people who are one way, like they might be artistic, but the business side is not too. too great.
So I think the most relevant or the most popular example to that is like we always hear stories of an artist who's a great singer, songwriter, and they go out and get a record deal. And the record company sign them off, get on these upfront bonuses, and then they go off on these world tours. And then later down the road, 10, 20 years later, the artist is going, well, the record company scammed me and this. And it's like, no, the record company understood business and you didn't take the time to study what they know. And so it gave them an upper hand over you. And because you were in a position where you needed the money, you just signed a contract and didn't think about the long term of, hey, what if I do sell $20 million worth of records? Or what if I do sell 20 million copies? What could that do for me? And so I think if we take a step back and instead of looking for somebody else to come along and invest in our vision, if we take a step back and just understand the inner workings of simple marketing strategies, simple business operating strategies, and then you can see what all of your options are. And not only that, at this stage in the game, when you look at record companies and stuff like that, they're going for singer, songwriters, creators who are already bringing something to the table. Like they're no longer just, oh, you're a nobody and we're just signing you off on the basis of your voice. They're looking at how many followers you got, how many sales are you generating on your own, and that gives you leverage when you come to the table. Because now if you've already built up 100,000 followers on social media, they're like, well, the market is saying there's a demand. And based on how much you've learned how to leverage that, you can either come to the table as a negotiator or you can come there just be like accepting whatever they give you. But if you don't understand what all your options are, you don't have anything to negotiate with.
All right. Last words in regards to everything you talked about.
Last words.
Yeah, in regards to entrepreneurship, your journey, anything regards to that.
I would say, actually, I'll say this. The journey of entrepreneurship and success as a whole requires two things: faith and failure. Faith, because you got to be crazy enough to believe that whatever you're doing is going to work. Failure, because if it's going to work, you first have to fail at it in order to get better at it. But when you fail, the caveat is that you need to rely on your faith to pull you back out the dungeon to get back up and try again. So success requires faith and failure.
Great. Where can people find you on social media or the internet?
I have, you can follow me on any social platform at Grow with Key. The one that I'm the most active on is LinkedIn. I have a newsletter that I publish there daily. And so if you want quicker responses, more direct information, LinkedIn. Also my website, growwithkey.com.
Hmm. Any new projects like in the future that you're working on? I know you were mentioning about the school, the free school, but anything else after that?
Right now, that's my sole focus right now. I find that I'm a tunnel vision person, that whenever I do something, I have to give it 1,000% or don't do it at all. And so right now, all of my energy and resources is going there. My focus is the next generation.
Thanks a lot, Keith, for being here. It was nice meeting you and talking to you. So I'm very glad that we made this recording. I hope everybody found some value in it. I know I did, so I really enjoyed talking to you. On that note, thank you everybody for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Welcome to a better lifestyle. My name is Richard.lesperance, and I go by the name of my man Richard, and I was with Key Mckay. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Richard.
No problem. My pleasure.